Alabama coming to number 5 Georgia. Um, it's going to be a rematch from an exciting and electric game last year. But let's talk about it. One high level statistic really quickly. Um, Kirby Smart, his record versus everyone else except Alabama right now, and in his tenure at Georgia is 107-13. So that's outstanding, right? Unheard of almost sometimes. His record against Alabama is 1-6. So you see the disparity then. Georgia also has a 33 game home winning streak that's at risk. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, obviously this is a rematch, but I wanted to kind of cover, what's different in this rematch, this year versus last year. Obviously teams change, but it seems like these teams are like way different than where they were last year, right?
Mhm.
Transfer portal and stuff helps with that. But, I think what Alabama had last year, um, they had Jalen Milroe, who was a lot more elusive, and that's been UGA's kryptonite for the last few years now. Um, they also had Ryan Williams, who was not really on the coach's radars like he is today. Um, they've become better at passing, and Ryan Grubb, he's the offensive coordinator. He's followed Kalen DeBoer from Washington. What would you say is different about UGA this year, Aaron?
Yeah. Yeah, so they're much better on offense in the skill positions, but they have a lot of injuries and thinness in terms of depth on the offensive line.
Yeah, that might come back to bite them. Obviously, earlier this year we saw Alabama take a pretty bad L earlier on against Florida State. UGA could have taken an L, but they didn't. But
hmm
with Alabama, what went wrong, and what do you think? How can they fix that?
Yeah, so ironically enough, the thing that was their callus that haunted them in game one was the dual mobile threat quarterback. Tommy Castellanos. He was a weakness for the Tide in game one. Um, but with that being said, again, the L couldn't have come at a better time of the year. It was an early wake up call for the team.
Yeah,
Uh, they have not had a challenge that you know difficult yet since then, but I think they have made the adjustments, and it seems like the team is woken up. They're averaging 50 points a game right now. Outside of that Florida State game, so we'll we'll see what's to come this game. It's another test. Gunner Stockton is not as mobile, but it's
yeah.
it's a much more competitive team. Yep. So, Mash, from your perspective, uh, who are some personnel or players that we should look for, in this game?
Yeah. Yeah, Gunnar Stockton's definitely one of them. He'll be key for if Georgia wants to find some success. Before we get into some names, both teams are dealing with injuries. I mean, most teams are, right?
hmm
But some key names here on both sides. And key like position groups. But it seems like Alabama is returning some guys that have been out for a while. We'll get to them in a bit. But obviously on Alabama side, you got Ty Simpson. He's been waiting for his turn for a long time. He's back in 2021, right? Former Elite 11 quarterback coming out of high school. Former 5-star. This guy has talent. He's just been buried in the depth chart a little bit. Jam Miller, he's one of the players that is making a return. He's been out with a collarbone injury since the summer, but he'll be back for this one. He is great for their running back room. Alabama actually hasn't ran the ball that much this year, and so he'll be a good addition for that room. We know Ryan Williams; he's still perpetually 17, but he's special, and he'll be a difference maker. Again, I am sure. Another wide receiver, Jeremy Bernard. He's actually a senior transfer from Washington, and he's been reliable. He's an experienced receiver, and he's already got a great connection with Ty Simpson. Those are a few of the names on at least on offense for Alabama. Who are you got your eyes on for Georgia?
Yep. So yeah, we've already mentioned Gunnar Stockton a little bit. He's a Georgia boy who holds the high school's records for a quarterback across the state of Georgia. But we mentioned the multiple skill position players that have come into the program this year to provide that depth. So, let's look at the wide receiver room. You got Zachariah Branch, right? He's the dream player that Mike Bobo has built his entire screen pass offense around, right? And he's been
He's
extremely effective with it.
yeah,
Um,
he's just got that speed.
yeah, yeah. You got Colby Young. He was with the program last year. Didn't get much playing time, but we're seeing him being a lot more impactful this year. And then you also have Dylan Bell. He made some big plays against Alabama last year. So you got your wide receiver room, big time players that can make big time plays. Moving to the running backs, you got players like Nate Frazier, sophomore now from Compton, California. He's making big impact. He's showing he's the RB1. Chauncey Bowens, you got Dwight Phillips, and then you got the big transfer from Illinois, Josh McCray, who was utilized a lot versus Tennessee 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So this is a much very different running back room than last year, much more depth. So yeah, that's my input from the offensive perspective on UGA. Mash, what's your insight and your input on the defenses for these teams?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Simply considering, like, historically, both of these teams, they've been known for their strong defenses, right? Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, but over the last year or two, like, we've seen some weaknesses spring up. For UGA, I think this year the young secondary has been dealing with like the inexperience of playing with each other. Against Tennessee, they had 371 passing yards on them. Daniel Harris and Ellis Robinson, the two, they play corner. They struggled a lot on the one-on-one deep balls a lot earlier this year, and so. But this year they have been a lot better at stopping the run. That's been obviously an emphasis from a defensive standpoint. For Alabama, figuring out who they want to be on defense and like changing identities. That's kind of how I wanted to, describe that. But this, surprisingly enough, this year, a mobile quarterback is what got them in week one, which is what we talked about earlier. But that's kind of what I've seen on defense. I think you had some stats. How do these teams rank up against each other or against in the nation, I guess?
Sure, yeah. So in the nation, across the board, it looks like, Alabama is just statistically is better. So total defense, they're ranked seventh nationally, averaging 246 yards a game. Georgia's ranked 47th with a little bit over 350 yards a game. Rushing defense, Alabama's ranked 18th nationally with 99 yards per game. Georgia's a little bit higher at 23rd nationally with
So
101.5 yards a
so
game.
pretty close there.
Pretty close there, right? Passing defense, this is the separator here. So Alabama's ranked third nationally with 147 yards. Georgia's ranked 96th nationally, giving
Yeah.
up about 250 yards, nationally.
I'd like to argue there that like Florida State, they didn't really have to pass on them, and otherwise
Mm-hmm.
they played a bunch of cupcakes, right? So that could explain the disparity there.
Fair. That's very fair. Okay, so yeah, that's statistically speaking, the numbers right now show to be in Alabama's favors on defense, right? So my question, kind of to follow up on that a little bit, overall in this game, what does Alabama do better, and what gives them the best chance to win this game?
Yeah, I think against Georgia, right? They passed the ball as a team, Alabama. They passed the ball 3 times more. Like they have 3 times more yards passing than they do rushing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And against a struggling secondary like Georgia has, that's going to be key for them. That's going to get deadly, I think. And I think they're highly efficient on offense, playing against a defense that just stats wise, they're playing against a defense that has a hard time getting to the quarterback. They're in the hundreds or something like in terms of sack rate and all that sort of stuff. So that's why those are the keys for Alabama's possible success this weekend. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, one big thing or key thing for me is their health, right? So their players are getting healthy at the right time. This is one of the biggest games of the year for them. So, they don't have any injuries on the O line, which is on the latter end a big concern for the Dogs. So,
Yeah.
healthy team, your stars are ready to play.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, so looking at it from a different lens, What does Georgia do better, and what gives them the best chance to win this game?
I think the mental the mental part of the game, the composure, like resiliency. They've UGA has hanged the banner for resiliency, right? Like they've proven that they are a team that can overcome any type of deficit. You can look at the Tennessee game this year. You can look up last year's matchup against Alabama. It makes the case that this is a team that's never out of the game until the clock reads zero, right? Like you can never count these dogs out. So I think the resiliency is a key factor for them. And honestly, UGA has a more balanced attack. So I think there's less of a risk of offensive production becoming one dimensional based on like what Alabama is trying to do on defense, right? If they try to stop the passing, okay, we'll run on you. If they stack the box, okay, we can throw it. So I think the balanced attack will be a thing that Alabama could suffer from. What about you? What do you
Okay.
think?
Fair, fair. I do want to add on to that. That's something that's very different about Georgia compared to last year. I felt like they were leaning on, even in the comeback and resiliency, they were leaning on Carson Beck to just
Yeah,
throw it
they
downfield.
had no running backs, and then all right, let's just throw it to the other team. Then that was the Georgia offense last year.
That was right. Um, One key contributor that I think Georgia does better and it's to their advantage is they're at home and they are good at winning at home. Again, they currently have a 33 game winning streak, and that stretches across multiple seasons when you talk about 33 games at home.
Yeah.
And they're at home Saturday, and the crowd is going to be amped up for this one. So uh, I think that'll be a huge factor. They don't have to worry about, you know, not being able to hear themselves because the crowd will be quiet on offense. But that's something Alabama's going to have to think about when they're trying to run their plays and be disciplined.
All right. So who do you pick?
After hearing the strengths and weaknesses of both teams and then seeing the statistics, like my decision kind of changed midway through the conversation.
Yeah.
What's the point spread? The point spread right now is less than a field goal,
Georgia
right?
-2.5. Yeah. So they don't even have
Georgia
home
minus.
field. Yeah, they don't even have home field advantage.
Mm-hmm. Alabama does look like they have turned things around, but just due to them not having that real challenge since Florida State, and Georgia has had that challenge recently against Tennessee, I'm going to lean towards the Dogs on this one. I think it's going to be an all-out brawl, all-out battle, but I think they find a way with that resiliency to win. What about you?
Yeah, I think well, first of all, I thought Tennessee was going to win, right? Which they almost did. But
Yeah.
I think, in all honesty, what beat Alabama the first time is the mobile quarterback. Gunnar Stockton can do that. I'm gonna go Georgia with this one. Yeah, I'm gonna go Georgia in a slight, like less than 6 points, something like that, right? Like Alabama will absolutely have a time to win or have the chance to win, but it's gonna be me yelling from section 300 that causes a false start.
Okay. Yeah.
All
Hey,
right,
we're dependent on you, man. But
I got you.
yeah,
Unbiased though, unbiased. That was an unbiased